what's happened is that Trump or Trump's team have started the answering of this question by saying, well, Ukraine can't join NATO. And this, of course, has made Zelensky mad, but is predictable.
Yes.
And it's probably a sentiment shared by all these people in Munich, all these different decision makers.
And to discuss the latest goings-on in Trump's world, I'm happy to say I'm joined by Roger Boyes, diplomatic editor at the Times. Good to see you, Roger.
Yes, you too.
So, look, I mean, I was going to start by saying it's all going on. When's it ever not all going on when it comes to the new US administration? Last few minutes, the president himself announces on social media that he's been talking to Vladimir Putin, and teams, Russian and American teams, are going to be immediately getting down to talk about Ukraine. What do you make of that?
Well, it's part of his blizzard tactic of just throwing things out massively at random and hoping that people will make mistakes, I think. It was predictable that the rhythm would be like this because of the Munich Security Conference, where the whole of the European and transatlantic security community get together every year. So that was partly Putin's audience. And it determined the timing of the release of this unfortunate American school teacher who'd been in the Gulag for the last 3 years as a kind of gift. I mean, a gift in the way, that a dog will bring back, the body of a mouse or something to impress his owner. It's that kind of fake gift. And Trump actually hasn't promised anything yet.
No.
And that's the way he likes it. And I think by the end of the weekend, the end of this conference, will be probably no wiser.
Yes.
I know you don't want to hear this on a radio show,
Well,
but that's
we live
the
in the
truth
real
of the
world, and we
matter.
live in Trump's world. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but there is stuff going on, and it will maybe move on a bit. There is a summit promise, but there has been one with Putin and Trump, but there has been one for a while. Zelensky is on record, but again, not for the first time, as saying that Russia, if a deal is struck to the disadvantage of Ukraine, then the Russians have got an army that can go anywhere, not just occupying Ukraine, but maybe into Poland. And he's talking about 150,000 troops being trained and ready to be stationed over the summer in Belarus.
Yeah.
So these are the factoids really at the moment, or more like the fears and bluff that's going on at the moment.
Normally, Roger, if you hear a leader, a world leader, announce that talks, negotiations are going to begin immediately on a subject as big and sensitive as Ukraine, you'd imagine that means that certainly on the side of the leader making the announcement, they have got a plan to put on the table. They have worked this thing out. Now, I know none of these normal rules necessarily apply where Donald Trump is concerned, and that's an important point. But if there is any such plan, unless something's happened that we don't know about, Volodymyr Zelensky doesn't seem to be in on the deal.
Yes, I think there are back channels and even front channels between Zelensky and the West. I don't think he's going to be completely sold out in Munich. I mean, Munich would be a terrible place to sell anybody out, right? So, the issue is what's going to happen. I mean, in terms of what kind of security agreement can we give Ukraine in any negotiation between Putin and the West? How can we guarantee that it's not going to be invaded even more completely, or that this invasion actually takes in other countries in the neighborhood of Ukraine? And so that's the first question. And what's happened is that Trump or Trump's team have started the answering of this question by saying, well, Ukraine can't join NATO. And this, of course, has made Zelensky mad, but is predictable.
Yes.
And it's probably a sentiment shared by all these people in Munich, all these different decision makers, including NATO decision makers.
Oh, that did seem clear. Now, the rules of NATO say you don't take in a member engaged in a territorial dispute. That just doesn't happen. Quite apart from the fact you'd never get unanimity among NATO members to admit Ukraine. Some would just say no to that.
Yeah.
But we've been hearing earlier Pete Hegseth at this defence meeting telling us, laying it down the law, very, very flatly and plainly. He says, look, there needs to be some sort of deal in Ukraine. If we get some sort of deal where there's a freezing of the line of battle, it'll be you guys who have to patrol and maintain that line, because we, America, are not going to be there. And more than that, if there's a flare-up, if there's some sort of escalation into conflict at that line, you're on your own. Now, that is language which will have to be music to Vladimir Putin's ears, a bit like the thing we've been hearing earlier on. Why is the Trump administration so keen to play tunes that are so pleasing to Vladimir Putin's ears, Roger?
Yeah, well, he's walked straight into that, but that was, I mean, first of all, Putin's aim before the Munich conference is always to split America from Europe. That's his function. When he used to make speeches there, he did the same. But what this Hegseth, this Secretary of State for Defense, is suggesting does have some idea behind it. And the idea is that we may land up with Ukraine like South Korea and North Korea after the Korean War. And now, South Korea became a democratic state and a prosperous one, but it wasn't a member of NATO, and there was never any possibility of it being a member of NATO. It's not in the North Atlantic, for a start. But but it did get security guarantees. It got security guarantees just like Japan did from the United States. And increasingly, it's become part of the defense thinking and structure of the West. Whereas North Korea has become a pariah and is trying to find a patron in Russia. Yeah. And that's perhaps the way that they think that Ukraine versus Russia can be reimagined. Because, after all, there hasn't been another Korean War. There's been a lot of tension. When Hegseth talks about the line of contact, that's a reference to what divides North Korea from South Korea. Yes. It's a demilitarized zone that is patrolled, by United Nations, but it could equally well, in the Ukraine case, be some kind of largely European defense force of some kind.
I suppose if you're looking at it from the Trump side of the argument, you could say, if you say to European NATO powers, look, there's a line of defence, you man it, we're not going to be there. And if you're attacked from Russia, if there's a flare-up, we're not going to be there for you either, you're on your own. If you say anything else, if you say America might be there, well, then you take away the impetus or the pressure on those states to build up their own defences. If they know, they can always call on that last ace card if they have to.
Yes, and of course they haven't been there over the last 3 years. Nobody's been there, really, over the last 3 years in Ukraine. What's happened is that America has largely rearmed Ukraine and made it into a modern fighting force. And that's what would happen. That's what would have to happen as part of a security agreement.
Right. Roger Boyes, great to talk to you as always. Come back and see us again.